Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Fred, you make me the host, and is Bruce here yet?
I am, yeah.
Right. So, you want to share your insight that we spoke about this morning?
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry. So I just wanted to hop on briefly to let everybody know what's going on with rates. We all heard that the Fed raised rates. They raised another 0.25%, which was what was expected, but it's kind of created something that I think we all just need to be aware of as real estate professionals and lending professionals. It's a little too much too fast, as everybody knows. The Fed funds rate was at 0. March of 2022 it was at 0. It's now at 5 to 5.25. So the amount of increases is huge. Like I said, 17-year, it's been over 17 years since it's gone up this much. Here's part of the challenge and what I want to mention that's important. We're definitely seeing some recessionary challenges, and we're seeing inflation come down. The reason mortgage rates are so high right now was 100% because of inflation. Mortgage rates typically run 1.75 over the 10-year treasury. 10-year treasury is like 3.40, almost 3.5 today. So mortgage rates should be about 5.1 to 5.25%. That's historically our whole careers, our whole industry, what it's always been. But when inflation's in play, rates go through the roof because nobody knows what to guess what the return should be long-term because you can't figure out what it is short-term, right? So inflation is coming down. It was, it was at 8%. Inflation was like 2% in 2020. It jumped to 4. It was at 8. It's already down to 6. They expect it to be around 4 by the end of the year. But what's happening is that the Fed's increase to try to fight inflation is a little too quick. So you're creating some recession issues. Like you have banks that are in big trouble, right? In other words, PacWest, Pacific West Bank is in trouble now. And the reason for this is there's just too much of a pendulum swing. And I don't mean I'm not, suggesting we don't have the right people in government. I don't want to get political, but, Powell's an attorney. He's not an economist. Wall Street is built into the Fed futures rate, 3 rate cuts by the end of the year. So what I'm getting at is that we know this was a lot of change. Now, what's happening is as a result of this, inflation's coming down and mortgage rates are dropping. Mortgage rates are dropping. They're dropping now. They've been dropping pretty much all week. And mortgage rates are going to drop and be pretty low, almost 1% lower by the end of the year by 99% of what all economists think. And the reason for it is because inflation is dropping, right? So what's happening now is that remember, we're in a market, Florida and New Jersey, we're in markets where we are seeing that prices are still increasing. We're pretty fortunate, right? We see that, or depends how you want to look at it. But throughout the whole country, not everybody's seeing that, right? So we had a little bit of a drop in prices coming up for the last 6 months of 2022. But what's happening right now is prices are going up again. In fact, CoreLogic showed I have the numbers here between CoreLogic and Zillow. The difference between March and February was almost double. CoreLogic showed a 0.8% increase. This is nationally in home prices in February. Now it's 1.6. What's important to understand is that's twice as much. So the prices are still going up. What's going to happen as mortgage rates come down is that more and more buyers, we've all heard this, buyers have been waiting for rates to come down. The challenge is there's no inventory. So when the rates do come down, you're going to have more buyers in the market. And since rates appear to be coming down in the very near future, since rates appear to be coming down in the very near future, within the next 6 months or so, there's never been a better time to have a conversation with a client if they're a little concerned about going up a little bit more in price because they could qualify for more. But as rates come down, more people are going to get in the market and you're going to have even a higher price challenge. So the good news is they can get into the market now. You can always buy the house, but you can always get out of the rate. You could buy the house, rent the rate. You could refinance later and get out of the rate. You don't want to be in a situation where when the rate comes down, everybody's going to be fighting and you're going to have to fight over price. You're better off dealing with the rate because you could always restructure the rate. It's a lot harder to get into the market. And this is something that we kind of all felt was going to happen. But right now with this rate cut and some of these changes and these banks in trouble and, this recessionary stuff going on, it's becoming pretty clear that the rates coming down are going to be much sooner than later. It'll be, by the end of the year, every economist, Fannie, Freddie, all the mortgage bank, they predict rates to be in the low to mid 5s. And right now they're in the 6s, mid 6s. So it's a significant decrease. It's just something to be aware of. It's not going to help you on every deal. People still have to be able to compete. They have to have liquidity with the appraisal waivers, but it's a conversation that we could have with your clients for you, or just you guys as real estate professionals should be aware of. And just to be clear, recession scares everybody. Some people aren't even clear how to simplify a recession. All a recession is a significant decrease in economic activity for an extended period of time, say 2 or 3 months. So all a recession is that things are slowing down. I mean, a gallon of gas is $1 less than it was a year ago. Companies are making less money. I mean, I was talking to Rob today. I think, Coldwell Banker reported $133 million loss last quarter. And when people lose money, they let people go. This is the recession stuff that's happening. So then mortgage rates come down. So you'll see rates come down. It's a good conversation to be able to have with people, because hopefully when rates come down, we'll get more inventory too, because we might have some buy-up buyers, or move-up buyers. But just thought it was worth mentioning today on the call. And if anybody wants a little more info on it, they could reach out. I don't have any literature I could send you on it. It's more a conversation, but all of us here at Supreme Lending, and we're able to have the conversation with you or your clients whenever you want.
Hey, Bruce,
Yeah.
I was reading the other day that there's bond money available now, the new bond program. You heard about that?
You mean a national or a state program? What do you mean?
It might be just in Florida, but I know that there's bond money. And
I mean, what typically happens, to answer that question generally, what typically happens on bonds funds is they get used up. So there is usually, even in the state of New Jersey, there's usually a resurgence of, a new bond being funded. So maybe that's what you're kind of referring to in Florida. Maybe there was a fund that wasn't available that might be available now. But there's going to be, rates are going to come down. And I just think it's worth your clients knowing that if they're fighting over that extra 10, 20 grand, I mean,
we have
just a conversation worth having, because if they can afford from a liquidity standpoint to do it, they're going to be able to lower the rate, and it'll be within a year now. Yeah.
We have the Hometown Heroes program too. You guys have that up there in Jersey? Hometown Heroes?
I don't know if it's called that. We got a lot of, there's some, you mean like for police, fire and all that? And
yeah, it's a little bit of a discount for buyers.
Yeah.
So that's helping buyers getting properties a lot easier.
Well, listen, we'll offer a discount for any buyer you guys got. So give us a call. We're trying to write as many loans as we can. So no worries at all. I don't care what they do. We'll get them in.
Gotcha.
Trying to get a better background here. All right. So
Thanks,
now is Bruce, I'm gonna kind of take it over. You guys can mute your computers here. I'm live from our new office in Avenel with Rob Durso and Bobby Golden. So this is one of the most impactful, actionable presentations I think I've ever done. And I've done it this will be the third time in the past 12 months I've done the concept, but this time I've actually broken it down. I actually spent almost 2.5 hours breaking down all the principles to this concept. And I put in the chat a link to the document, and I'm going to share the document. So here is our document. Hopefully everybody can see this. And it used to be called the Ultimate Listing Conversation. Now it's the Ultimate Listing Conversion. Okay, because it's like next gen. I'm going to talk about some aspirational quotes and some mindset issues, because I think if you're not of the right mindset, you're going to be tremendously handicapped in any type of a conversation appointment that you may have. First thing I want to say is I always like to put out a couple of quotes. If you believe in what you do and you can really help people, then you have a moral obligation to try to bring it to as many people as possible, which takes it from your bank account to helping people. And I think in my experience, if I was to knock on a door and say, somebody was just in a car accident in front, can you help them? Like 100% of the people, oh my God, I want to help my neighbor, whoever there is an absolute stranger. But if you have commission sales breath, that same person will slam the door in your face. Would many of you agree with that? Right? Your instinct to help is stronger than your instinct for gain. So I want to try to tap into that and say, feel the emotion, close your eyes and look at when you help somebody and think about how that feels and how you want to keep repeating that process. And, the question isn't who's going to let me do it. It's who's going to stop me. Right. And the only person that can stop you is you. All right. Appointments are the best leading indicators to new business and new listings. What are you doing consistently to secure appointments? Okay. A listing appointment is the conversation that occurs at a meeting between a qualified seller and a competent professional. I believe that we can effectively communicate our message to a seller. They will always choose us. Now, when I say I believe they'll always choose us, it doesn't mean we're going to win every one. But if I don't believe they're going to choose us, I'm handicapping my odds. Okay. And lastly, before I get into the meat of it, and this is really going to be a step-by-step process, and some of you might have the urge to get off early because you're like, I know that, but I would say, please stick through the whole process because it does have a lot of consequence. Okay. A presentation is defined as a speech or a talk where a new product, idea, or piece of work is shown and explained to an audience. Never present. Right? A presentation is what they block you out of. Okay, we want to have a conversation. We want to perfect the appointment. And this is the success formula, and it goes step by step. It's perfect for newer agents, but it's just as relevant for us old timers. Okay. You need to have a framework for your appointment and not go ad hoc, not go and wing it. Because when you go and wing it, sometimes you're like, oh, I really nailed it. And sometimes like, man, I was really off that day. And you missed out on a very, very valuable, very, very scarce commodity, which is listings. Okay. And I don't usually use the word scarce, but right now listings are scarce so that we can't afford to be cavalier about them. The first step is preparation. With proper preparation comes confidence, and with confidence comes conversions. Does everybody agree with that? You can just nod your head. You don't need it. So when you're prepared, you have a different game. Okay. So don't wing it. Visualize the appointment before it happens. And this process I'm doing today is going to give you the ability to visualize every step. And you're going to go through the process, and then you're going to be amazed at how it all falls into line. And at the end of the discussion or the formula here, I'm going to take questions. I want you to write down objections. I have no decoder book. I'm going to tell you like right on the spot how I would address any of these objections. So after you visualize the appointment before it happens, you need to understand the market, right? And prepare for the appointment without getting into the small details and the weeds. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the third step is, I call it up yours. And I mean, up your game. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Okay. Don't try to find a shortcut. Just perfect what you're doing. And if you're going to do the right thing, abundance comes to us. Okay. Step 2, unfortunately, in real estate, I have to say this: arrive 10 minutes early, ring the doorbell 2 minutes before the appointment time. Okay. It's maddening to me when people are like, oh, I was late for the appointment because there was traffic. Well, folks, New Jersey, Florida, there's going to be traffic. Okay. Plan for it. If you're stressed about getting there on time, you will not have the optimal mindset to win, right? Have you ever been like, oh my God, I'm going to be late for this appointment, and by the time you get there, you're all flustered? Are you going to have your best game when you're flustered? You definitely won't. Step 3, in my opinion, is use the first 5 to 15 minutes to tour the house. And the home tour is first designed to build trust and rapport, and second, to assess the value and make recommendations for preparing the home for market. I want to push and see if there's anybody that's going to challenge me on that, especially experienced agents. right? I mean, does it matter, if the powder room was updated or not? I mean, you might take a note, but the real value is if you connect with the person, right? And when you connect with the person, it's almost automatic that A, you're going to get the business, and B, they're going to be respectful of your recommendations, right? And then price also becomes less of an issue. Is Amy on the call? Amy Roan? I texted her, asked her to join. I don't know if she's on with us.
I'm here. I don't know. I'm not able to get, can you guys see me? Because my screen looks blank, so I can't see myself. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
Let me see if I can, do you have your camera turned on?
Yeah, showing that the camera's turned on, but I'm blank.
Maybe turn it off and back on. If not, we can hear you.
Okay, let's try that. Yeah, I'm sorry about that because I know you wanted me to be here, but
No worries. So Amy, I guess it's about 2 years ago, right? We had an appointment, and it was almost a ceremonial appointment that we weren't going to get. Is that
Right.
accurate?
that is accurate.
And I can assure you that I've only been on one listing appointment in my life in Rumson, and that was the first listing appointment I went on with Amy. And it wasn't about my knowledge of the particular properties in Rumson, although with technology we can assess it. It was about the way Amy and I made somebody feel about the process that helped us secure the transaction. You want to maybe just describe the beginning of our appointment? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, yeah. So basically, these were people that I knew for quite some time. I had the property listed prior. And I mean, I did everything I could to get it sold. They consistently were above market value in their price point. And what didn't ever seem to matter, clearly I wasn't communicating in a way that they heard me. So they actually went to another agent who also didn't sell it. And then it was off market. And I was very fond of them. I wasn't upset with them when they switched, but when they suddenly weren't listed, I knew they likely were going to go back on. And, I knew ultimately that, or at least I felt ultimately, I always had their best interest at heart. I knew them incredibly well, and I wanted to secure the listing if possible, but I knew that it was probably unlikely, especially because, they were leaning toward listing agents that were local to the peninsula, Rumson and Fairhaven. So even though I lived locally, I don't think they liked the fact that our office wasn't on the peninsula. So Rob and I went in there, and prior to that, Rob and I and Maria had done a lot of legwork in terms of really coming in strong and knowing the value and being able to present it in a way so that they could hear us. And where I might have been somewhat deficient in being able to explain that to them, Rob masterfully was able to explain it to them. And I think that the trust that he built by bottom lining it with them was such that they wanted to move forward with us.
I mean, the first 5 minutes of the sitting at the table was, I know the owner of this real estate firm, I know the owner of this person. Don't be disappointed if we don't list with you. But then we had the conversation.
We did.
And the conversation started with, asking questions. We talked about the comps. He was a very educated individual. He kind of had a really good idea about what his property was worth. Fair to say, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't understand the process. I think that if you consistently put a house at a price too high, you don't get any offers. And I think that they kept thinking that if they were going more old school, like if we ask for this price, hopefully we get that price, or they negotiate a little bit. So he was educated, but at the same time, he still was pushing that, significantly over market value list price that he wanted.
Right. So when we started to have the conversation about, comps, we came into the understanding that he'd be satisfied with a 2.2, 2.25. sales price and believe that to be the value. Would you agree with that assessment, Amy?
Yes, I think so.
And I think he started with a mindset of, let me reach for the stars, and we
Yeah.
didn't go into that. And I don't know if you remember when I had him calculate the difference between these two numbers and write it down, Amy.
Yes, I do remember.
So I showed him what a house that sells quickly, under 45 days in that price range versus over, 120 days. The difference was 16.02%. And this is the actual only
Right.
piece of paper that we really had out at the appointment.
Mhm.
And I had him multiply it on his iPhone and write that number down. And it was like 200, he
Right.
wanted 2.25. So it was like $268,000. And I'm like,
Right.
hold on to that number. And after we had him hold on to that number, I went into the next process, which was going into the evaluation. And the point of kind of introducing Amy is we didn't get that listing in Rumson because we sold the most properties in Rumson. We didn't get it because we had a glossy presentation. We didn't get it because we talked about drone photography. We got it because we built rapport and trust, plain and simple. Would you dispute that, Amy?
I would agree, 100%.
Okay, and I wouldn't say that we weren't prepared. We didn't wing it, even though you had the listing before, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think from my understanding even of other agents locally who were trying to secure the listing, there were a number of them that even kind of alluded to the fact that because I was inexperienced at the time that I'd originally taken the listing, that I had done something that, maybe was less than. So we were almost coming in. I don't think, I know that they didn't believe that. And the truth was they wouldn't price the property at what I suggested. So, but we were operating at a deficit in that regard because, some of those agents said things that, probably they shouldn't have said. And, they even told us about it when we were there. So we actually had, that hurdle to overcome as well.
And Amy, can you just briefly share with the audience, what was the outcome to the listing? Like, where did we recommend, where did they list it? And then
Right.
where did it end up ultimately sell?
I believe we were at 250, I believe, is where we listed it. And before we left, Rob had said to them, if we list it where we're telling you to list it, there's very reasonable possibility that we'll get multiple offers and get into a bidding war. And they were kind of like, scoffing at that because we hadn't been able to get offers and they just couldn't get an offer on this property. And it was a beautiful home. So there was no reason why. So Rob said, and Bruce was like, well, I don't know about that. And he sort of like laughed. So we did end up in a bidding war. Ultimately, we did get a 2.5 offer, but we had a 2.450. So I think we closed 200,000 over asking, and it was an all cash offer. So they decided to go with that rather than the higher offer that was a mortgage.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Okay, so Rob, you were saying that you had him do you had him do the numbers from what he wanted to list it at and what it should be sold at. So I don't know if I lost something in that conversation. Does that mean that you wanted to show him what the difference was between the actual sale price and what his La land price was? I don't get the reason why.
So Ron, the one of the magical pieces to this discussion was immediately before we listed it, it had started at 2.550 and it went all the way down to 2.195 and didn't get any offers. And the reason it didn't get any offers is because the market rejected it, right? I'm going to go into this a little bit longer, but I was going to say that, I said to him, like, after your house started at 2.55 and when you got to 2.2 or 2.195, Bruce, what do you think your first offer would look like if you were fortunate enough to get one? And he was like, oh, it's probably going to be a low ball. They think I'm desperate, right? So we had the mindset positioned correctly before we re-put it onto the marketplace. His mentality was if I want 2.25 or 2.2, I need to ask 2.5, not I should start out at 2. So we basically had to program his mindset on how the market would work. And it's important to say that Amy and I never recommended a price until we first educated the homeowner. And then we said, look, there are 3 ways to put it on the market. And with all due respect, I think the last 2 times that your house expired, you took the lottery approach where you overpriced it. The second approach is to put it on at, the market-based approach, which is akin to what an appraiser would say your home is worth. That influences the value, but that is not the value. And the third way is to put it auction style. And I showed him that auction style got, I don't know, 12% more than, lottery style. So he almost felt guilty by not going auction style. He's like, hey, if I price it at the market, you think we're gonna lose out on opportunity? Do you remember that, Aim?
Yeah,
I mean, he was apologetic to say, can we go at 2.25?
right.
And that was really where the close really happened, is when we got him to try to convince us, hey, if I go at this price, do you think we can still get the job done?
Mhm. And I also think that understanding that when you overprice a house, how dramatically that the prices start to slide down. Like, I don't know the current percentages, but pre-COVID or even through, if your house is on the market for more than 30 days, it was slipping down to like 85% of original list price. So if people aren't really educated on that, they don't understand. And so they don't know that by doing that, the damage that causes to their pocketbook. And I think Rob was very effective in the way that he presented it to them, because they got it.
Very, very smart individual, very sophisticated. And, we were able to communicate the true north, the value proposition that we had, where it didn't matter that our, at that time, relatively new office in Tinton Falls, which was not in the peninsula, which was not doing, consistently multi-million-dollar properties, would earn that business. And before we go, Aim, I want to ask you to just share with the group the proud appointment that you did in Brielle, where you stood your ground.
Right.
And, first of all, the preparation that we did collaboratively, we looked at every other listing on the river, right?
Mhm.
And we looked at, what did the listing agents put in there. And if there were things that we didn't know intimately, we did all the research. So when you went on that presentation, you were prepared for any possible question.
Right. And
There were good.
This guy was tough. So I went in cold. I'm not an expert in the Brielle market at all. I was super nervous. I think, Rob, I had originally wanted you to go with me. I don't know. I think you were like out of state or something. It was
in Florida.
I went Florida. It was, I mean, honestly, it was good that I went on my own, in the respect that I did stand my ground. I came with, I was very prepared in terms of, since we had that listing with the Eaglesons in Rumson, I was very prepared for how to present this. So this is a successful businessman, a real bottom line guy. He wanted to be significantly higher than where we were, but it was completely unrealistic. And ultimately, in the end, I left there thinking there's no way, because he was staring me down. As I did my best, I thought there's no way I'm getting this listing. But sure enough, a week or two, and I told Rob, I don't think it's going to happen. And shortly thereafter, he called and I did get the listing. I did actually get over asking on the property, as I told him that I would. But he decided he didn't want to sell it after I had negotiated and secured a contract. So unfortunately, I didn't sell it, but he did call me recently, and he is going to relist it again, and relist it with me. So I'm prepared and ready. And hopefully this time I can get it to the closing table.
Right. And after the appointment, Amy called me up. She's like, Rob, I think I lost it, but I feel good about it.
Right.
And then it was with great joy I found out when he called you, 5-7 days later and said, hey,
Yeah.
I want to work with you.
Right.
So you just never know. You held to your convictions, and that's what, ultimately won the day. And again, you weren't the top listing agent in Brielle, and it didn't really matter.
Right.
So, Amy, thanks for hopping on and sharing. I learn a lot when we work together. I just got to tell you that. So,
No, me too. Me too. And I'm sorry about my video. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but yeah.
that's okay.
Rob, I have a
So-
question. Is that a strategy that works specific in a seller's market more than a buyer's market? Or is that just a consistent strategy that should always be there to do that?
In my opinion, it works in every market. And I'm going to, Bruce, you not being a listing agent, I just want to get your feedback from maybe the perspective of a homeowner when you listen to the principles as we get towards the end of this. Okay. So,
Rob, one thing before you go ahead, I just want to point out, and this is like a real credit to Amy, and I think it's something that we should keep in our minds. Remember, no matter how intelligent and how smart your seller thinks that they are, they're really smart in their field where they excel. And we need to recognize that and understand that we are really smart and really know what we're doing in the field where we excel, so that the playing field is even, as long as we're confident and we know what we're talking about. And we shouldn't ever let the supposed brilliance of the seller take us off our game.
yes, sellers, maybe do 4 transactions or in their lifetime, and they're not experts. And if they did a transaction 7-15 years ago, the market's very different. So step 3 is building rapport. Okay. And I learned this the hard way. When you go through the house, you want to use that time to build rapport, build trust. Secondly, assess the value of the home. I'm going to go through some really fundamental, basic things, but I think you should print this up. And, if you have some tips that can improve it, I'm open to it. But this is, in my opinion, it's the formula for a successful conversion. Building rapport involves being respectful, paying attention to details, taking some photos and notes. Ask the seller to give you a tour of the home at the onset of the appointment, and ask for permission to take notes. That's really important, because if you're walking through the house and you're taking notes, right? Why are you taking notes? Is there something wrong? What are you saying about me? I've observed people and how they behave. If you say, do you mind if I take a few notes? They're like very impressed. If you just start writing things down, they're like, what, is there something wrong with my house you're writing down? Let me see what you're writing there. All right, Ron, you're smiling. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, but I never had that. I never had that problem. I think they appreciate when you're writing stuff down. I think, you tell them, when they say to you, well, I just finished upgrading this, and you're writing it down, showing that you're interested in what they did.
Can you see a downside for asking permission to take some notes?
No, I think it's a good idea. You should tell them that, do you mind if I take some notes about the house? I think they would be impressed with that.
And then here's another one that I think it's a multi-purpose, right? When evaluating like the utilities and the mechanicals, this is a must do. Ask this: do you mind if I take some pictures so I'm accurate when we get the market on the home? Now, what does that presume? We're working together, right? Do you mind if I take some pictures so that it's accurate when I put the home on the market? All right, you've already got them thinking that we're closing this transaction together, okay? These are some things that I personally like, and this is open for some more experienced people, but when I finish the tour, I'd like to go to a less formal place to meet. So like if their living room is someplace where they don't go, I'd rather meet them in their kitchen table, which coincidentally is where we did the one with, the Eaglesons in Rumson. We sat at their kitchen table. That's where they have their morning coffee. That's where they're most comfortable. That's where I want to sit. Okay. And try to avoid sitting directly across from them like you're a banker trying to see if I'm going to approve a loan for you, you know? It has this adversarial mindset. So I would try to have a more casual sitting arrangement. You might say, Rob, you're nuts. These little details don't matter, but they all do. Okay. If you're sitting next to them, you're on the same side. We're talking about, hey, when we introduce this to the market and they're on my right side, as opposed to me looking at them, it's completely different. Be personable, and briefly discuss where they're going after the successful sale of their home and before going into your, I say presentation, I should say conversation.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Also, when you're sitting there, where your arms are, I think is important too, as opposed to, them just being folded in front of you.
Oh yeah, body language. Yeah, here, body language, right? 55% of the message. Words, only 7%. Okay, so thank you for that observation. So I had one listing appointment where when I went through, the elder daughter was a sophomore in high school. And when we sat down to talk about moving, they're like, we really want to, take the next chapter of our life, but our daughter means the world to us and she doesn't want to leave until she finishes high school. Now, I felt like this was just a tea appointment instead of a listing opportunity, right? But what I shifted to was I said, so where do you want to move and why do you want to move? And they wanted to move to Jackson. She's like, as a matter of fact, look this up on Zillow. This is the house we'd love to buy. I know it won't be available in 2 years, but I just harnessed into that emotion. And I actually shared a story about my brother who moved when he was a sophomore. And now the kid's got more connections than anybody. He's got his friends from Edison and from Princeton. And it's really propelled him in his career by having a massive network. So I shared that with him, and the daughter is happy as can be, and it was the best move they ever did. And we didn't have to wait 2.5 years for her to graduate. So be personable, discuss where they're going after the successful sale of their home before going into the conversation. This builds excitement and motivation to move. Okay. Step 4 is own the process. Okay, it's our appointment, it's our opportunity. Basically, it's our show. And I think the word that I like is choreographed as opposed to scripted, because scripts seem to be words and choreograph seems to be the motion, the emotion, the process, right? When you go on it. And choreography is the art or practice of designing a sequence of movements of physical bodies in which the motion or form or both are specified, right? So when you go out there and you have that choreographed success, right? You feel like this is going to happen. Okay, that's the 93% that aren't the words or the script. And I hope that that analogy has some meaning when you're reviewing the whole process. Owning the process is setting expectations up front. Okay, you might say, hey, after doing a walk through the house, are you open to you making some cosmetic repairs, cosmetic improvements, staging, right? Then it's time to address pricing. Okay, so you want to set those expectations up front. And Sylvia and I talked yesterday about like some properties that might need repairs and might not be ready to go on immediately. And we're going to go over that a little bit later. You should offer to assist in identifying like, simple positive ROI items, which is return on investment, repairs. Then I'd say first, I'm going to evaluate your home from the lens of an appraiser, using comps, adjusting for home size, rooms, location, condition, amenities, other factors. Then we will discuss 3 ways to introduce your home to the market and how these strategies influence the ultimate sales price. Because for the eternity that I've been doing the business, most agents go out there with one price. They do the comps, they say, here's what I think your home is worth. Now, I'm going to ask somebody in the audience here, when you go out there with one price, what does the seller almost always think that their home is worth? Anybody in the audience?
More.
Always worth more.
They always think it's worth more. So I have our live audience is saying the same thing. They always think it's worth more. So now if you own a price and you say, this is what I think your home is worth, you know, the seller for emotional reasons might not be able to objectively look at their home because it's theirs, or they might be, you know, mentally thinking that I need to negotiate and say it's worth more and then negotiate down, or a combination thereof those two events. Would you agree with that, Bobby? Like, do you think that they really think it's worth a lot more, or do you think that they're puffing to try to get a higher price?
Right.
Or both?
A little bit of both, but more puffing than it.
They're more puffing to try to get a higher price, right? So they think the strategy is to convince you, Bobby, that their home is worth more, so you work harder to sell it for more. All right. So once you don't own it, you just say, hey, this is like what an appraiser would do. It looks at the comps, it looks at the condition. You know, the appraisal approach would suggest your home is worth, you know, 530,000. Now, there are three ways to introduce your home to the market. The first is the lottery, and this is pretty in line with the way I talk about it. And I say, you know, the lottery approach is, you know, you price it a little bit higher, you have room to negotiate down. This was a prevalent strategy before the advent of syndication technology, where once I put this on the market, everybody that's looking for it has access to it. Okay, and this is where sellers, lottery is the process where sellers overprice their home in anticipation of negotiating the price down. Okay. The second approach or option to put your home on the market is market approach, where we look at what the appraiser would look at. And the market approach is different from the appraised value to the extent that market approach emphasizes current competing inventory, buyer demand, and sentiment, right? An appraisal looks at what properties closed at. Do we have any appraisers on the call here today?
I'm gonna praise it. I'm gonna praise it, Rob.
Okay, so Anthony, as an appraiser, what are you looking at to determine value?
Location, condition of the property, external economic sources as well.
Right, but you're comparing it to properties that are on the market or that closed for the most part?
Closed.
Closed, right? So
Yes.
you're looking at closed sales. Now, if there happen to be an abundance of new properties coming on the market, which is hard to imagine now, that might influence the value down, or if there's low inventory, that might influence the value higher. But the strategy that appraisers use, to a large part, doesn't factor that in. They just look at historical sales. And how far back do you typically go, Anthony?
Well, it depends on the property type. I mostly worked with commercial, mixed use, industrial, and office. So for me, it was 2 to 3 years.
Residential is 6 months, and then you can't go to a year.
So residential 6 months. So if something closed 6 months ago, it probably went on the market between, you know, 2.5 months and 8 months ago, right?
And
you
they
think the
allow for
mar-
time adjustments, but it doesn't quite catch up to your point. It's always a little lagging data.
And do you think that 2.5 to 8 months is going to change? The market could possibly change there. I think so. So the market approach, in my opinion, is the appraisal strategy, accounting for a buyer sentiment and competing inventory. Because I think what's on the market is highly influential to what the property goes for, not just what the comps were, because the comp suggests it's 500,000. There's only one house on the market and there's 40 buyers. You do the math, it's probably going for 6, right? You can say all day long, well, the comp, you can, as a buyer's agent, you can say the comp suggests it's worth this. Well, they're like, I have 14 offers that are 100 grand over. So sorry about that. Third strategy is the auction strategy, and this is the strategy of pricing a home slightly below the market, let's say 3 to 8%, in anticipation of attracting abundant qualified buyers competing to win the bidding. Okay. Do not quote this, but according, and I give you this mindset here. Like, I don't want you to go into too much details or weeds, but I'm going to read this to you. This is from a Cornell, which is a pretty reputable university. I did some research. Emotion drives, emotional drives lead to bidding behaviors that are not based on optimized calculations, like in the case of eBay overbidding. According to researchers in behavioral economics, a psychological bias called the endowment effect gives rise to the common overbidding behavior in the ascending auction. Okay, so people lose sight of what the comps are, and they just have this emotion to win. Okay, it stimulates the bidder's desire for the sale item badly, even with higher bids, by encouraging them to fantasize about possessing the item by bidding. This allows participants to compete against one another to own the spotlighted item while making irrationally driven decisions for overbidding. The concept of scarcity also takes part in making the auction look so special, and works best with items that are unique and scarce. In this market, real estate is scarce and every home is unique. Okay, even if it's a townhouse, it's unique. So does that make any sense as to why maybe this auction style, creating a scarcity mindset where people need to bid aggressively to win is going to benefit your seller? Anybody that wants to push back on this?
No, but I use that terminology, the lotto market and then the auction. It does work. And you explain it correctly.
Thank you, sir.
You know, one of the things that I say in this conversation is, you know, when you price it lottery, who's in charge of that negotiation? It's the buyer. Whereas if you're doing it in the auction, then who's in charge? Then you, the seller, is in charge, because you're going to determine, you know, how you're going to force the buyers to bid up. And I think that people like the idea, of course, that they're in charge rather than being the victim of having to negotiate down.
And Robert, that's an excellent point. And I know that before Amy did the Brielle listing, we took the profile of the seller, who was the CEO of a company and a really successful person, and we used the language, you know, if you want to be able to control the process, you need to have multiple bidders so that you're in control. If you overprice the property, you only have one offer. I said, who's in control, Robert? The buyer is, right? Because that's the only game in town.
Right.
But if we were able to have 3, 5, 10 people bidding against your home, who's in control then, Robert? You are. Right?
Yep.
So that's the question, the asking better questions piece to the whole puzzle that we have here. Okay. And this is a step outside of my written document, but I think a lot of sellers have the mindset, and I'm going to ask Bobby Golden, listing agent extraordinaire here. Do you think some sellers have the mindset like, hey, Bobby, I'm in no hurry. I'm not going to give my house away. I can wait.
Some do.
Right. And is that like I think it's a logical theory, right? If I wait around, I'll get the perfect buyer, right?
That's what they think, but then our job is to educate them and let them know that that's not the right strategy.
Yeah. And I think the best way to educate a seller is to ask questions and say, look, Bobby, if we're going to wait for the right buyer and a buyer sees that your home has been on the market for 35 days in this market, how do you think they're going to go about making a bid? Tell me what you expect the first bid to be.
Well,
Yeah. Why?
because They smell blood. They see that your house has been on the market, nobody else wants it. And now is my opportunity to steal the property.
Right. So and there's a significant shift in Bobby telling that to the seller versus asking them a question. So many agents have been trained to say, hey, you know, and a lot of them have this chart that goes. It says, hey, the longer your home is on the market, the lower the price you get. They show you the chart, they try to explain it to you. And it's like Charlie Brown to the seller. I'm not really hearing what you're saying because I still want to overprice my house. But if you ask them and say, hey, you know, Bobby, if we go with this price, we don't have any offers. How long are we going to wait for the perfect buyer?
Give you my answer.
Okay.
That I go on, I use every listing. So I'd say, Mr. Lazar, here are the two benchmarks that I use. If we go 2 to 3 weeks in this market, 10 to 15 showings. If we hit either one of those marks without an offer, I'm just letting you know that we're going to be discussing an adjustment on the price. I said, you could have a hot weekend and have 15, 20 people come look at your home and move. So really the question I'd have to ask is how many people do you want to have come through your home and not make you an offer? So if we have a hot weekend, we're going to be talking about it on Monday. But if we're getting activity and the feedback is, you know, here, there, whatever, if we're on the market in this market anyway, 2 to 3 weeks without an offer, those are the two benchmarks that I use to let you know that we need to make an adjustment on the price. People like your home, they're going to come in, they say, I like your home, and then they're going to leave, never to be seen again. Translation is they like your home, they don't like your price.
So, an option to consider, Bobby, would be instead of having that, you know, you're very knowledgeable, but sometimes the pride of ownership of the words is more than the credential of the author, right? So if you get them to say it, I think it impacts more. And maybe you want to experiment with a pivot like this and say, hey, you know, Bobby, if a house doesn't sell, like you say, you're not in a hurry. If it doesn't sell, when are you going to consider making a price adjustment or repositioning the price? What do you think a typical seller might say?
Well, a typical seller might say, well, that's your job.
I'm-
You to tell me that.
I've never had that, but when I've asked, I've never had that. So, like, what do you think a seller would be willing to wait in terms of time before they would reposition it?
A month?
Okay, so it's on the market for a month, and Bobby, we're putting it on at 575 instead of 525. After a month, where would you want to reposition the price?
My personal opinion is under 5, 499.
So you want to, so if we cut the price 25, 50, 75,000 after being on the market for a month, can you tell me, like, where do you think your first offer is going to be?
I would like to think that it would be close to asking price.
Most sellers, and I want you to experiment with this, most sellers are going to say, I think I'm going to get lowballed offers because we cut the price and it's been on for a month. And I'd say, well, why do you think they might think that? They might think I'm desperate. And I might also say, do you think they might even think there might be something wrong with your beautiful house? Yeah. So are you sure that that's the strategy you'd want to use? And it kills it every single time. They don't want to overprice the house. They don't want to go to the lottery with perhaps their most valuable asset that they have, right? But the pivot I did with Bobby was, instead of Bobby sharing his experience, which is vast, I asked the seller, you know, what do you how do you think your first offer is going to look? Cutting the price 10, 20, 50, 75,000 and being on the market 2 weeks or 30 days, every seller is going to be like, oh, the buyers are probably going to think I'm desperate. They're probably going to lowball me. And the reality is, when you do reposition it, you actually might get multiple bids. We've all seen that, right?
Yep.
But the seller is going to tell you that, oh, I'm going to get lowball offers because they think I'm desperate. And that's really where you want to be. And this is not a manipulation. I truly believe that the quicker your house sells, the higher the value you get, the more qualified bidders you have, the more the likelihood that it's going to get bid up and above the market value through that auction emotion of winning the process. Does that make sense? Right? So having, and giving them names matters, right? Because then you can refer to them instead of saying overpricing, underpricing. If you give it names, then people can relate to it and say, I want to go auction style. I want to go market style. Okay. And then we get to the decision and the closing. I can't believe we only have 4 minutes left. If we decide to work together, how would you like to position your home? That's where they say auction, lottery, market. If we decide to work together, what would you be doing to prepare the home for the market? If we decide to work together, when would you like to do it? When would you like us to do the first open house, this weekend or next, right? These are like closing questions. When they ask that question, basically the listing already belongs to us, right? And then it's just details. Okay, instead of saying, well, let's talk about commission and see if I can get the business. Hell no. Okay, compensation commission is the next step. And here's how I encourage you to present it is, okay, so the next step is to decide what are we going to offer the agent that brings us the buyer. All right, and more times than not, if you have rapport, the homeowner is going to say, well, what do you recommend? I bring a sheet of sold properties and currently on the market properties. I say, look at, the prevalent commission being offered out is 2.5, 2 3/4, 2 1/4, whatever it is. I show them what's offered. I said, how would you like to compensate the agent that brings the buyer? That's who they decide. And then I tell them mine. Go ahead.
I just want to let you know that works because Judy and I just got a listing using that close on the commission.
All right. So,
because we brought the printouts out, sorry to cut you off. We brought the printouts and we showed the homeowner, here's agent number 1 offering 1.75% to a buyer agent. And here's how we operate with our listings, where it's a 50-50 split, 2.5 or 3%. And that was the game changer because they were going to go with a Colonial Banker agent that broke up the commission differently.
And perhaps even discounted the one that they offered to the buyer's rep. I typically have a list of recent sales inventory. You give them a little bit of data. They feel like they can decide how they're going to compensate the agent that brings us the buyer. You could be like Bobby and do it 50-50. You could be saying, hey, we're paying out 2.5. Our fee is 3.5% because we do this. Or you could say we're offering 2.5 out. If you say, hey, our fee is 3.5. We do marketing, open houses, negotiating. And they say, oh, can you do it for 2.5? I love to say, wait a second, Bobby, you want to pay me the same as the person that opens the door? I just want to understand. And you're like, oh, not really. Okay, but that's where you have to have your script nailed and down pat. Pro tip. Okay, Silvio, are you still with us here?
Rob,
I'm here.
Rob,
I'm here.
Okay. Yep. All right, Ryan, we'll come back to you. So Silvio, we talked about this yesterday, right? If the house isn't ready to go on the market, you should take the listing as an exclusive, uncirculated, unmarketed listing until the home is ready to go on the market. Because they're not going to be influenced at a cocktail party 2 weeks later to list with somebody else. Or in the example I shared with you, we had an agent who they were helping them prepare the house for the market. And part of that preparing was decluttering and putting stuff into a pod. And once that pod was delivered, one of the neighbors came and said, my son wants to buy in this neighborhood. How much you asking? They told him. He said, let me talk to my lawyer. The lawyer said, you don't have to pay the realtor a commission because you don't have a signed commission agreement. And the realtor was SOL. Okay. In this business, if you're going to put an addition on somebody's house, would you do that without having a signed bid and a contract? No.
No.
So why would you start to help somebody, Silvio, put their home on the market without having a commitment to work together, right?
It's foolish.
Yep. So in my world, if the house is valued at 500, I recommend listing it at a ridiculous price. We're going to put it as a uncirculated, non-market exclusive listing at $1 million, $2 million. And once the home is done, I see what the quality of the work is. I look at what the current competition is. We'll determine a price together. Is there any reasonable person that can object to that?
I
think
could
so.
see some people being confused about the $1 million though. How would you frame it if they were like, what do you mean listed for $1 million? What are you trying to do here?
So we're not, Sylvia, we're not putting it on the market. All we're doing is we're committing to work together. And when the home is ready, then we're going to determine what the final price we go to market with is.
So it's just like a placeholder?
Correct. It's our commitment to be working together, because as soon as we commit to work together, I start to do the real valuable work. I will share with you my vendors. I'll make recommendations on, what cosmetic improvements, what items you need to do, how we can stage the house, right? Why would I do that why would I give you my contractors, tell you how to prepare the house if we haven't agreed to work together yet? That doesn't make any sense. Right? And Sylvia, if we put it on for $475 today, maybe once you do all the work and it's great, maybe I might recommend we put it on at $5.25. So I'm just saying we put it on at $1 million just to document our commitment to working together. Does that sound fair, Sylvia?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So
Rob,
that
is this an office exclusive contract that we have in the dot loop?
So you can do I don't know if there's a office exclusive. You could do a listing with a waiver of broker cooperation.
Okay.
That
is
is
a
the
simple way to do
office
it.
exclusive that we do have in dot loop.
Or you can use the office exclusive. And then you just redo the listing when you determine the price. All right. Objection handling. A lot of times when, Amy, I don't know if you're still on. I know you came on earlier, but did anybody ask you how many homes you sold in Brielle when you were there? You're still on. When we were in Rumson, we controlled the discussion, and there was no conversation about how many homes did you sell between 2 and 3 million. How many homes did you sell in Rumson? But if you do get those questions, you might want to punt a little bit and say, I can get back to those later on. And most of the time people kind of forget if you're doing a great job at building rapport. And a lot of times I'd like to ask people, hey, Sylvia, what's most important to you if you put these in order of priority? Selling your house for the absolute highest price, having a stress-free transaction, or selling it in the shortest period of time. If you put that from highest to lowest. And while they're debating that, right, it's a lot of times I want to sell for the highest price, and they're like, time on the market or stress. I'm not sure what's second. Will you just tell me what it is? The solution to everything is to get it priced right and to sell it quickly, right? If you have multiple bids, you sell it quickly, there's less stress. You're ensuring that you're getting the maximum value. And by definition, it's the shortest period of time, right? Because, having if you live in a house, having it show ready is a little bit stressful, right? You got to get the kids out, clean it up, make it ready. And then sometimes people cancel appointments. That's stressful. That's not necessary. Overcoming objections. It's a conversation, and you have this document here. Never present, always have a conversation. Rapport, maintain composure. Okay. I don't know, is there any objections that this audience has that you want to just throw at me, and I can kind of share with you how I would handle it?
Commission's too high.
Commission's too high compared to what?
To other realtor.
The commission's too high compared to the other realtor that's calling us. So we can talk about, commissions, or we can talk about what value we have, right? And if you, and I showed this to Silvio yesterday as well. If you have a history of selling houses for more than your competition, which we all should do, because if we sell houses quickly, we get a better list to sale price. Silvio, do you remember what your number was?
Yeah, I sold homes 44% faster than average in my market and for 3% higher than average.
So, you want to list it for, discount Danny for 4%, but I actually sell for 3% more than the average. So if they're going to do it, I should be charging 7, but I'm giving you a deal at 5.
Yeah, and 44 days faster, which means one less mortgage payment you have to make. So add that on top.
So like you could have these statistics and share them with your clients, right?
Where do we sign?
Yeah. Oh, and another thing that I just wanted to say in terms of like body language, right? I feel that a lot of times when you go to somebody's house and they're looking at this financial transaction that is larger than they've made ever do in their life, that creates, base anxiety just because of the pure size of it, right? And where am I going with this? So we just lost my train of thought here, folks. So it creates anxiety because of the size of the transaction. And so we're talking about if you kind of retort and have a lack of confidence in the way that you address these items, it creates more anxiety upon them, right? They sense it almost like a dog can sense if you're afraid and will come attack you. That's the same piece that sellers have. And if they can feel that level of comfort, and this is what I was driving at here, but thank you for bringing me back here. If they sense that you're here to make one commission, okay, it's all about the dollars, but I don't recommend saying this, but I recommend them feeling this. And it would be like this: hey, Bobby, if all I ever did was sell your house and have you be a satisfied customer and we never worked together again, you never referred me, with all due respect, I don't even want to be considered. I don't want to enter into this arrangement, because my clients, I want to exceed your expectations. I want you to tell your friends and neighbors, and I want to be your realtor for life. Like, my thought is not to say that, but my thought is that they can feel that, right? And if they look at it as a transaction, price is significant. If they look at it as a relationship and that you're going to do the right thing, price is not as significant. Would you all agree on that? And I have Bobby and Bob Durso both shaking their head here with their experience that, that's the reality. And if they think it's just a cash and carry transaction, that I'm going to do the minimum I have to do to get your home sold, and that I'll sell it for the least amount of work, whether it's in your best interest or not. That's the transactional mindset. If it's, hey, I'm here for the long haul, I want to do right by you, and I want to have repeat business, I want you to tell your friends and relatives what a great experience it was, then price is less significant. Would we all agree on that? Okay. So, I know this is basic, but if you can't see it in your mind first, it'll never materialize. And if you don't do your homework and prepare for it, you're going to be handicapped to get these most valuable, scarce listing opportunities converted into closed business. And I'm just going to end this by saying that, a well-priced listing and a commission check, there's nothing different. It's going to happen in no time, right? And the only question is maybe you can double end it. So, any questions? Nope, I must have done a good job where nobody's interested.
I think that link that you gave us is not, we can't get access to it.
All right, I'll repost it.
No, I'm trying to open it too.
You ever get sellers afraid to go auction style?
Sometimes they resist it. When I offer it, we usually settle at market value. So, but I give them those three options, and I think that was Rob's suggestion was those,
Okay, yeah, that could work.
that works real good.
So that's a great observation. So who's upset if they get a market value listing? Anybody? So if the ultimate decision is they listed at where the market is, we've won, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
If they list it slightly below the market, I think we both win as well, because they're going to get the maximum value by having multiple people bidding against them. You can't not see full value if you have 5, 10 bidders, qualified bidders making offers on your property, right? And then you can lean into that emotional premium that you get from people just wanting to win the auction, right? They just want to win the bid. So can somebody test that link, make sure that works? So Silvio, Amy, Robert, Ron, everybody that contributed, Anthony, I appreciate your input. I humbly hope that this was valuable. I hope you print this up and you use this as a framework to go about your appointments. And I hope it adds some value to get your potential sellers to be your clients and your clients to maximize the value from the sale of their home.
Great, Rob. Thank you. Yeah, I got the link. The link works good.
All right.
I got it too. Thanks, Rob.
So Ron, you have anything to add since you're a
Well,
trainer, you work with new people?
Well, to be honest with you, I've been the listing agent. Oops, hold on a second. I don't know what happened here, but let's take this down. I've been working as a listing agent for the last 38 years in real estate. And you learn things as you go on appointments. Every appointment that you go on, you go, oh, I wish I would have done that better. I wish I would have done that better. But the little tidbits that we get from you, Rob, and we get from Colleen, and we get from, you know, the other realtors in our peer-to-peer, adds to what you need to do to get better and to sharpen your skills. So when you go to those listing appointments, you have confidence and the skills to get the job done.
Wonderful. Thank you. And as always, this document will be on the Abundance in Real Estate channel, and it will be with the video if you need to refer back to it or ever get the document in the future. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, bro.
Have a great day, everybody.
Goodbye.